All right, so as she said, today's webinar is on how to build credit. And let's get started. So it's a three-part webinar today. The first part is a financial goal setting. Second part is creating a budget and saving money. And then third, we'll talk about how to build credit. So first things first, what is credit? As she mentioned, I work here at STCC, Springfield Technical Community College. And it's very interesting when I ask this question to my students, how many people think they know the answer in their head. And then when it comes time for them to formulate that answer into words, it then becomes a little bit more complicated to say exactly what is credit. So I took the liberty of just adding it to the next slide for you. So technically, credit is the ability of a customer to obtain goods or services before payment based on the trust that payment will be made in the future. So it's kind of like you get money upfront for a purchase with the understanding that you are going to make payments back in return until that purchase is paid off. Sounds easy enough, right? But there's a little bit more intricacies to it. So there are different types of credit. There's something called secured credit, and there's also unsecured credit. And as you see in the two bubbles, secured credit on the left is something that's, more guaranteed by collateral. It's tends to have a higher credit limit. And that's because if the borrower defaults, the lender has something that they can take away in return to kind of sell and recoup their loss. They call that collateral. An example of a secured credit would be a home mortgage, because if you default, typically what happens is the lien, and then after that, they take the property and sell it to recoup the money that they lent you. On the other end of that, they have something called unsecured credit. This is not guaranteed by an asset and tends to usually have a higher interest rate and a lower credit limit as well. These are more difficult to get approved for because there is no collateral that the lender can seize to recoup their loss. And an example of an unsecured card or an unsecured credit would be a credit card. For example, if you had a $25,000 car loan over the term of 5 years, that would be considered a secured loan, because if you don't make payments, they usually or typically repossess the vehicle and take back ownership of that to recoup their loss. Different types of credit or examples of. You have something called revolving credit, which allows you to borrow over and over again up to an approved amount. For example, those are credit cards, HELOCs, and PLOCs. Another type is installment credit. That you borrow over a fixed period of time, a certain amount. That is a lump sum loan that's usually paid back with a set interest rate. An example of that would be an auto loan, a student loan, or a mortgage loan. And then third, you have what's called open credit. This type typically doesn't have a hard credit set limit. Payments are due in full every month. The amount you pay is usually based off your usage. For example, utility bills and charge cards. I don't know who's on the call today, but this one isn't as common anymore as far as charge cards goes, because that was something that department stores used to do back in the days, but they don't really have that same setup now. Most department stores have revolving credit. But yeah, that's what the charge card system used to consist of, was open credit. All right, next we have, what is a credit score? So a credit score predicts how likely you are to pay back a loan on time. The credit score is typically from 300 to 800 on the scale of 300 to 800. They're used to determine the interest rate you receive on the loan or credit card and the credit limit. There is no one credit score. Any score depends on the data. Any credit score depends on the data used to calculate it. And it may differ depending if your lender uses Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion. Right? So we do have 5 factors that make up your credit score. That is, the biggest chunk of it is payment history at 35%, and then credit utilization and at 30%, followed by average credit age, 15%, account mix is 10, and credit inquiries is 10. So in taking a look at this pie chart, if you were to look, you'd see that over 2/3 of your credit score is made up just on your ability to make your payments on time and how you use the credit that you've been given. So to dive into these a little bit deeper, so your payment history, every month your payments are reported to the credit bureau. And if you make your payment past the grace period that usually credit cards or loans offer you, it gets reported as a late payment. That payment stays on your credit report for a while. So you want to make sure that you, if anything, you always make your payments on time by the due date, but if not, within that grace period that you get. Credit utilization, which is on that the 30%. Credit utilization basically means, let's see, how you're using the credit limit that you've been given from, XYZ credit card. So for example, if you were given a MassMutual credit card and they gave you a balance of say $10,000, a lot of people don't know this, but you want to make sure that you stay under the 30% of the utilization of that card. Some people think you want to stay at 30%, and that's not correct. So on the $10,000 credit card, roughly $3,300 would be your 30%. You never really want to go above that $3,300 limit. The lower you can stay underneath it, the better it's going to help your credit score look in keeping your utilization low. Websites like Credit Karma, for example, do a good job at letting you know when you're reaching your 30% utilization. So that way you can make arrangements or strides to help bring that percentage down. But just a big takeaway with credit utilization, again, you don't want to keep it at 30%. You want to keep it below. The max would be 30%. So next is the average credit age. That is 15%. With this, what I tell my students is when you get credit cards and say you make a purchase, like you get a Bob's Furniture credit card, for example, and your plan is to use that credit card to buy your living room set. And then once you've purchased your living room set and paid it off on your card, now you want to close it because I don't need the card anymore. I have my furniture set. This is where the average credit age comes into play. You don't necessarily want to close it because that will affect your average credit age. I just recently I was a guest speaker in one of the classrooms on campus regarding personal finance, and I presented on buy now, pay later loans. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. They're kind of popping up everywhere. Afterpay loans through Klarna, and it's a whole bunch of other companies doing it now. But one of the things I learned in researching these places is, or companies rather, is a lot of people don't know this, but they do affect your average credit age. When you open up a line of credit, you use it to make your payment on your item, and then your account gets closed right after you're done. So there was, when I was researching, there was a gentleman who had done that about 8 or 10 times, not realizing that every time he did it, it affected his credit score. So his average credit age went down from, say, 15 years of usage on maybe 2 cards to now factoring those buy now, pay later loans, and it reduced how long it looked like he had credit because he kept opening and closing, per se, loans every time that he did a buy now, pay later. So you want to be mindful of that. Those things do affect your average credit age. Granted, it's only 15%, but it still counts. The next one is account mix, coming in at 10%. Account mix is basically refers to what types of loans do you have? Do you have a good mix? Like, do you have a credit card mixed with an installment loan, like say a mortgage or student loan or car loan? They want to see that you have a good mix of loans on your account. And then credit inquiries that comes in at 10% as well. Credit inquiries, you have a soft inquiry or a hard inquiry. Soft credit checks do not hit your credit score, which is nice. So when you get those pre-approvals in the mail, they've usually done a soft credit check on you to determine your credit worthiness. If you then say, oh, this sounds great, let me see if I can get it, and you send in the information or call in to say, hey, I do want this card. At that point, usually they will then run a hard credit check on you to make sure that you are the right candidate for that card. And it counts towards your credit score. Typically, a hard credit inquiry will knock about 5 points off of your credit score. If you are doing something like purchasing a car or shopping around for rates for a mortgage loan or refi even, FICO usually gives you a period of 45 days that while you're shopping around and having all these hard credit inquiries done, rather than them hitting you one or individually, they will usually group them together as long as they are within that 45-day period and count it as one hard inquiry, which is really nice. So something to keep in mind the next time you have to shop for a car, you only get one hard inquiry within 45 days with your FICO credit score. I did some research and saw that Advantage has a very lower time frame of 15 days. So one hard inquiry counts within the 15-day window if you were to use the Vantage score system. And for those that don't know, the Vantage score system is just another option, I guess you could say, as far as credit bureaus goes. It's one of the newer ones, aside from TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. All right, so now that I've talked enough about this slide, let's move on. So credit score ranges. As I mentioned before, they start at 300, go all the way up to 850. As you see here, anything below 599 is pretty bad. You may not want to apply for credit cards or, a mortgage with that kind of score. 600 to 649, considered poor. 650 to 699 is a fairly decent score. Once you get up to the 700s, that's when you start to get more credit card offers in the mail. The interest rates tend to be a little bit better than the average. And then when you get to the 750, 850, now you are in the excellent category. Typically will receive some of the best rates if you were to go for, a mortgage loan or a car loan. And as it says, usually a higher score makes it easier to qualify for loans and may result in a better interest rate. So how to read and acquire a credit report. First, well, what's on a credit report, right? A list of past and present credits, accounts, and loans, including your credit cards, loans, and how much money you owe, on time or late payment history. So this is where you could tap in to see how you do with your payments. It's easy to think like, oh, I'm doing pretty well. I may have had like one late payment here and there. But if you pull your credit report, it will give you a very unbiased view at how well you really are doing with making your payments on time. And remembering that it's 35% of your credit score, it's probably the first place you want to kind of tackle and get under control if you see that there's a lot of late payments on your credit report history. Next, you have check your credit report. It is important to check your credit report. I usually tell people to do it annually. If you've been a victim of identity theft or fraud in the past, you might want to bump that up to maybe quarterly or semi-annually. Just tap into it and check it a bit more often to make sure that they're not waiting for you to forget about them so that they can continue doing what they started out with. And then how to get your credit score. So the annualcreditreport.com is the only free government mandated site for the 3 reporting agencies. So you can log on to that and get your report there. You can also request it once a year from each of the credit bureaus, which is nice. The MassMutual app and online banking provides your credit scores, factors that impact it, and what you can do to strengthen it. So that's nice. And that's right in the palm of your hand. So those are the 3 things as far as how to acquire and read your credit report. How credit score can affect your finances. So a good credit score, an excellent credit score, will save people hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of time. Someone with excellent credit score gets better rates on all loan products. It's just the truth of the matter. Poor credit ratings are considered higher risk borrowers, meaning higher borrowing rates. A poor credit score can affect your ability to find housing, rent a car, and even get life insurance. And then conversely, how you manage your life situation can affect your overall lender's decision. Meaning, so if you are currently unemployed or have a spotty employment history, sometimes lenders can look at that and make a decision like, I don't know if this person's going to be credit worthy to pay this back on time if they don't have the means of keeping a job to make payments. Sometimes income is taken into account for a lender's decision. Another big one is your debt to income ratio. And I'll talk about this for a bit. So debt to income ratio is just what it sounds like. How much debt do you owe versus how much income you bring in? Obviously, the lower the amount of debt that you have versus the money you bring in, the more responsible you're going to look to a lender to be able to make the payments on time if they were to lend to you. One way to reduce your debt to income ratio in regards to credit, if you have credit cards and you're responsible with the usage on your credit cards, one thing you could do is reach out to your lender and increase a credit limit. That will help. So for example, if you were to have a $5,000 credit card, reach out to your issuer and say, I've been making good on these payments. Can you revisit my credit limit and possibly increase it? And they say, sure, we'll increase it from $5,000 to $10,000. And if you had a $2,000 debt on that credit card, your debt to income ratio now looks a lot better because now you only have 20% debt on the $10,000 card versus 45% debt on that $5,000 balance. So hopefully that makes as one way that you can help your debt to income ratio. Another thing is you don't want to look like you're overextending yourself financially when it comes to taking out credit or lines of credit in regards to your finances. That you don't want it to have too many payments to too many issuers that match your income that you're bringing in, because then a issuer might look at it and say, I don't know if this person's going to be able to pay us as well as all these other credit companies that they owe. So be mindful of that as well. All right, so your credit score can cost you. Someone with good credit, $25,000 car loan over the course of 5 years. Some places are even going up to 7 or 8, which is getting kind of crazy. But on the basis of 5 years, with good credit, you could get an interest rate at 3%, making your payments $449 a month, and only having about $1,900 in interest, which isn't bad for $25,000. Conversely, someone with poor credit can have an interest rate of 18%, making your payments $634 a month, and the total interest paid of $13,077. And believe it or not, I know for some people, they're looking at this like 18% for a car loan. That's unheard of. In today's day and market, with the interest rates growing as quickly as they were throughout 2022, the 18% is not too far fetched anymore as it once may have looked. So with that said, it does make a big difference when you have good credit as far as getting the best rates. And then this is a credit card example. So if you had an $18,000 credit card balance with payments of $250 a month, no additional charges, a good interest rate at 15%, takes about 44 months to pay off, and you pay $2,409 in interest overall. Poor credit could have you up to 36% APR, 235 months to pay it off, and you're looking at $48,268 to pay off that debt. One tidbit on credit cards now, they are mandated to give you that nice little box. I don't know if you, when you get your statements, if you just look at the due amount or, check through your pages, but one thing you will see, they usually will tell you if you choose to make minimum payments, how long it's going to take you to pay it off. And then if you were to bump up your payments to the dollar amount shown in that box, it shows you the reduced interest amount that you would pay to pay off the balance. Something definitely worth taking a look at, because you never just want to pay the minimum every month. That is usually calculated to only keep you in debt, because it pretty much covers your interest fees and interest rate, plus a very minute amount that goes to the actual principal that on the item that you paid or purchased. So if you don't take a look at your credit card statements in depth, I highly suggest it. And if you are making minimum payments, play around with the numbers and see if you were to add an extra, couple dollars onto that, how it would drastically help to reduce the interest that you pay overall. How to improve your credit score. So first things first, you want to review your credit report. Believe it or not, a lot of people tend to find items on their credit report that shouldn't be there or don't pertain to them even. So first things first, pull your credit report, take a look at it, see what's on there that shouldn't be, and dispute any errors that you come across. The next thing is to make sure you make your payments on time. As we mentioned, that's 35% of your credit score and has the biggest impact. Pay your debts responsibly and on time. It works in your favor, I promise. You can even automate your bill payments as long as you are responsible enough to make sure that those funds are in there on those due dates. Set reminders or create a filing system for it. Keep old accounts open. This refers back to that, I think it said inquiry or credit age on the previous page. The older your credit age, the better. If you have delinquent accounts, charge-offs, or collection accounts, take action to resolve them so they don't become a hindrance in your credit score. The utilization of 30%, pay your credit card balances in full and the surplus if you can afford it every month, and ask for a credit limit increase, as I mentioned, to help with your utilization percentage. Limit the amount of inquiries that, or soft inquiries don't hurt your credit score, but hard inquiries can stay on your report for months to years. And then just to, again, touch base on what I mentioned earlier, hard inquiries can stay on years. Bankruptcies, I think, stay on there for up to 10 years. Soft inquiries do not hit your credit report or hurt your credit report score, excuse me, at all. And then if you don't have a credit score, the credit union here at MassMutual would love to work with you one-on-one on how to start building that credit responsibly. They may have the option to do a secured credit loan or credit card, which allows you to basically give them the money, which sets your credit limit. And then after a year or so of on-time payments, they switch you over to an unsecured credit card. That's one way to build up your credit history. And there's a ton of other different options as far as beginner credit cards, but I would definitely start with the MassMutual Credit Union. They have a phenomenal staff, and I'm not just saying it as a plug. They do have an awesome staff and options to assist their members. All right, so we do have some facts and myths. First one says, how long does it take for negative information to age off of your report? So negative info will stay on your credit report for different periods of time, but generally it takes 7 years. And again, the caveat, 10 years for bankruptcies. Does paying off a loan help or hurt your credit? If the loan that you pay off is your oldest line of credit, the age of your credit will be newer and your score will drop. If the loan that you pay off is your only loan, then your credit mix will suffer. Will paying the minimum on my credit cards improve my credit score? No. You need to pay at least the minimum payment on your credit card every month to have on-time payment history. Paying your balances in full every month will positively impact your credit score as it improves your credit utilization percentage. One thing I do want to add to this section here that a lot of people don't know about is when you have a credit card and you make your payments in full, you don't have to worry about the interest charge. And they usually give you a little bit more than just the 30 days because the way the cycles work to make that payment. So if you ever get to a point where you can pay off your credit card balances and you get a chance to start fresh, when you start making your payments in full, you'll see that you don't ever have to worry about the interest charge because they can only assess that once there's a balance at the end of that reporting month. Next question says, how long does improving your credit score take? And, oh, sorry. Answer to that is how long it takes depends on why your credit score is low. If the major negatives on our credit utilization, and then you pay off your balances, your score will improve drastically in a month. But if your credit is low because of multiple collections and poor payment history, it could take several payments or several months of on-time payments for your credit score to increase and for that to roll off.